Hey everyone, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Perfect. It's great to have everyone here. Thank you to those in the audience just tuning in. We've got a super exciting space for you guys. We should have a couple more panelists joining us here, but I'm going to work to get them in as we kick things off here. We're super excited for our real world asset tokenization space today. We have a phenomenal guest, one that we haven't one topic we haven't been able to talk about yet, that I'm super excited to hit on. We actually have experts on in the space, and that is the tokenization of wine. There's been a lot of talk about this for a while. I have a personal story about this that I might tell at some point. And yeah, we're just very excited to have dVIN on. David, I don't know if you can hear me all right or not. Just want to confirm you're good.
No, I'm here. I'm good. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you. Thank you so much for being here. Before we dive into everything, I'd love if you could introduce yourself and dVIN to the audience.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for inviting us on today. I appreciate it. I'm a fan, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation. It's gonna be great. So quick introduction. I'm Dave Garrett. I'm one of the co-founders of dVIN Labs. We're building the universal protocol to tokenize luxury wine as an asset on the blockchain. My background is I was a tech guy. Started my first company when I was 22. Sold it when I was 28, and then went and dumped it into a vineyard and a winery in Argentina. And I was there for about 10 years, building a pretty cool project there. And since then, I've kind of been doing wine and mostly wine all around the world, in Hong Kong, here in Spain. I live in Barcelona, Spain, in California, and I've been working in wine for a long time. And that's kind of where dVIN came from. A bunch of my friends are, winemakers, and they started seeing proposals for blockchain projects in wine, and they came to me and said, "What is this?" And over time, we thought, hey, there's some really interesting problems that can be solved by tokenizing wine, and we kind of came up with our approach, and they asked me to lead the project, and that's where we are today. That was back in 2020 when we started talking about it, and in 2021 it became a project, and then it was a company, and then it was a protocol, and now we're launching a token.
Phenomenal. And I just love everything that you guys are doing. Seriously, it seems like there's so much going on at dVIN, and I'm so excited to dive into everything you guys have built and are continuing to build. And I'm not sure if whoever's on the dVIN account is going to be joining us as a speaker. Thank you for joining. But if you are, I'd love for you to introduce yourself as well. If not, I would love to have the infineo team introduce yourselves. Potentially Dr. Murphy, if you'd like to start.
Sure. I'm the chief economist here at Infineo, and where we are tokenizing life insurance. And just as an economist in general, I'm just interested in this space and very curious to hear more about what you guys have going on with wine.
Perfect. And we also have on our Chief Information Security Officer, Tony Garcia. If you'd like to introduce yourself too, Tony.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Tony Garcia, Chief Information Security Officer here at Infineo. I encrypt all the things, so to speak. But yeah, like Bob, I'm excited to hear about what's going on in the wine space here. This one kind of caught me by surprise, I know personally, but a very interesting topic.
Yeah. So I know that you gave us a little bit of the background there on dVIN, Dave. But if you could just kick it off with discussing how you see the benefits of digitizing and tokenizing a wine bottle. What are, like, from traceability? What are the benefits that you see?
So there's actually there's a bunch of benefits. And when we started looking at different projects that came to different winemakers, we saw that they were trying to solve different things, right? There were projects that came in that were trying to solve authenticity or anti-fraud and anti-counterfeit. There were some projects that were coming in that were trying to solve secondary market sales and transparency. There were some projects that were coming in that were trying to solve loyalty. There were some projects that were coming in and trying to solve chain of custody and provenance. We think that actually all of those problems are important. And what we're basically building is this kind of universal protocol that's like a single source of truth for any bottle of wine in the world. And so we view it as kind of three $10 billion problems. So the wine industry is very large. It's about $485 billion a year. It's about the same size as the airline industry. But what we're focused on is the luxury segment of the industry, which is about $100 billion a year, which is very big. It's a huge industry, and more importantly, it's a big industry that over the course of the last 30 years has not had the same path as many other industries. It hasn't had the same consolidation. So as you know, like the last 30 years has been huge for consolidation. Most industries have there's been a lot of M&A, and there's a few big companies that control most industries. What that's allowed for, and it's kind of difficult to know whether it's chicken or the egg, but it's allowed for this digital what we call digital transformation. So these industries, because they, if it's the food industry or the beverage industry or the financial services industry, because there's a few big players, they're able to have through digital transformation, they're allowed to have a lot more efficiency and a lot more data. They can make decisions better. But in the wine industry, it hasn't had that consolidation, which means that it hasn't had that digital transformation. So in the wine industry, instead of there being 5 or 6 big players, there's 30,000 independent winemakers around the world. And there's about 10 million independent middlemen. And when you think about it, it makes sense, right? Like if you go to buy a nice bottle of wine, a $50 bottle of wine or a $100 bottle of wine, you're not buying it from Walmart or Target, right? You're buying it from a little tiny wine shop on the corner, and that guy's keeping track of his inventory on a clipboard, right? Or maybe you're buying it at a little tiny restaurant. You're not getting it at like Dave & Buster's. You're getting it at a little tiny restaurant that's independently owned and keeps its own independent inventory. And what that means is that the data, that consumption data, never makes it back to the producer, never makes it back to the winemaker. So all of these winemakers are making decisions, whether it's on, product development, product mix, marketing, messaging, packaging, supply chain efficiency. All of these problems, they're just making decisions without the kind of business data that every other industry in the world enjoys.
And so when you speak to the data, you're saying for winemakers that are producing fine wine today, not fine wine that exists already potentially in the secondary market. I think that that's a big distinction, because when most people think about fine wine, at least when I do per se, I'm thinking about wine that's been sitting in a cellar for over 50 years. But there are still manufacturers that are looking to produce fine wine today, and that sort of data isn't available to them with how they're tracking their inventory currently, is what you're saying, right?
Sure. Actually, that kind of leads to another really interesting problem. So let me tell you, a good friend of mine was the CMO for Smirnoff. And when he woke up in the morning, he could fire up his computer and he could see how much vodka was sold at the Walmart in Indianapolis yesterday morning. It's called a depletion report, right? And he gets these depletion reports, and that allows him to make a lot of important decisions, right? He can decide, hey, my marketing is working really well, or it's not working very well, or these demographics are purchasing more vodka, or hey, I'm selling a lot in Phoenix. I need to send more to Phoenix. I'm not selling very much in Korea, so I'm not going to send as much there. So it allows them to make decisions that make their businesses more efficient and more profitable, and more responsive to everything from advertising to marketing. Wine, not only does it not have that data, but more importantly, wine is unlike any other product in the world. Most products, consumption and purchase are the same thing, right? If you buy a t-shirt, you wear it the next day. If you buy a car, you drive it home off the lot. Maybe if you buy an avocado, you give it a couple of days, right? But you're going to typically, consumption and purchase is kind of the same thing. But with wine, if you buy a great bottle of wine, you're going to lay it down for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. So even if the winemaker could get purchase data, which they can't get because you're buying it from little tiny players that don't know how to send that data back to the winemaker. But even then, you're really not getting the consumption data because consumption is so far removed from purchase. So yeah, you're exactly right. Like whether it's wine that's made today, where winemakers trying to make decisions about, new wine that they're making, to wines that have been out in the marketplace for 10 or 15 or 20 years, there's just no information that's getting back to the industry that's helping them make smart decisions about all of the business decisions they need to make more informed decisions to make a better, more profitable business.
Can I jump in here for a second, Jackson? So here, speaking as an economist, yeah, this is always intriguing to me. Can you speak just a tiny bit on that, like how much of it is, like you say, somebody buys a fine bottle of wine, it's not like if they bought some really expensive sushi, which they have to eat right away or it's not going to be worth anything. How much is it? Do you have a sense of, like they just want when they have dinner parties for people to see all of the, oh, look at what I have over here in my case. And like, it's kind of a prestige thing, like as if they had rare books on their shelves. Or is it also even like, how much is an investment? Like, do people ever then, hold it for 10 years and then resell it depending on market conditions? Can you just speak a little bit just to that in general? Because I'm sure your applications, you have more specific, just for people.
Sure.
Market.
Sure. So when we take the luxury wine market, like I said, it's about $100 billion a year. There's a segment of that which we call investment grade wine. And investment grade wine are wines that have a life in the secondary market, right? Where you might buy them and you might sell them for more money later. That's about a $10 billion a year market. But those wines typically will, you'll hold on to them for up to 30 years. So the average bottle of investment grade wine will leave the winery for somewhere between $100 or $150 a bottle. And it will typically change hands 3.5 times over 15 years. And every time it changes hands, it'll double in price. So when it's finally consumed, it'll have a market value of around $800 to $850. That's your standard bottle of what we call investment grade wine. And investment grade wine is wine where typically it's from an important region like, Bordeaux or Champagne or Burgundy or Barolo or Napa Valley. And typically it's a producer where there is forced scarcity. And that forced scarcity, sometimes that's, ecological, meaning, there's only a little bit of land where you can actually grow the grapes that make that wine. Or sometimes it's regulatory, in Bordeaux, in Burgundy, in Barolo, all three of those places, there's a pretty strict regulations on how much wine can be made from each region or from each winemaker. So that forced scarcity, if there's only 10,000 bottles of a particular wine and 100,000 people want to buy it around the world, then that creates obviously demand pressure. So what's interesting about that particular market, the investment grade wine, it's kind of two interesting pieces of that. One of them is because the average lifetime is 15 years. That $10 billion a year business, it's actually more like a $200 billion asset class. Because that wine's in lots of places, right? It's in bonded warehouses, or sometimes it stays in the winery. In Barolo, you actually have to keep the wine in the winery for 8 years before you can sell it. or sometimes it's in your uncle's cellar, so he can show it off when you come over for Thanksgiving dinner. But it's a really big asset class. But the second piece of it is because it's so exclusive. Like we say this all the time. One of the real benefits of tokenizing is, anybody listening to this conversation, if we said, all right, take $100,000 and go and buy stocks or bonds or invested in real estate or invested in diamonds or invested in gold or silver or Bitcoin or any number of a bunch of different asset classes, they would be able to do it in 10 minutes on their phone, right? But if you said invest $100,000 in investment grade wine, probably nobody listening to this would be able to do it even in a few days or a week, because it's very hard to do. Especially, you might be able to go buy a bunch of wine, but like invest in wine using the same criteria that you would invest in other assets. Like, how would you figure out, price risk? How would you even figure out pricing? Like, there's just no real comps for it. So one of the really amazing things that I think we get by tokenizing wine is price transparency, price history, global price transparency, which I think is really important. And I think that will bring a lot of liquidity and a lot of new investors into the marketplace.
I love that. And that's incredible. Seriously, just messing around with what you guys built. It's so cool. And the approach you guys have taken from digitizing the individual bottles of wine is great. I'd love if you could speak to the digital cork NFTs that you produce and like what a user actually does in the dVIN interface right now.
Sure. So at the heart of what we do is the digital cork. So the digital cork is an NFT that is a digital twin to an individual unique bottle of wine. We call it a digital cork. Here in the EU, they actually call it a digital product passport. We work with the EU regulatory agency that by 2030 will require any luxury product that is either originates or terminates in the EU to have a digital product passport. So we're kind of helping to create the standard for that inside the EU. But what that digital cork is it has a lot of elements to it, right? One of the elements is kind of the authentication, anti-fraud, anti-counterfeit. So it's a single source of truth for that individual bottle. So you can see when that bottle was created, you can see the chain of ownership for that bottle. You can see, for example, most bottles have, at least in the luxury category, have some sort of anti-fraud or anti-counterfeit device on it. Sometimes that's a hologram or an encrypted QR code or an NFC device or an RFID device. We work with everything from, there's a company that does crushed industrial diamonds to a company that does, it's really cool. They use digital ink, so nanoparticles in ink to create a unique signature on a bottle. But whatever the winery uses for its on-bottle tech, that's registered in the digital cork. So if you see a bottle, you know where to look up that information on the blockchain. So you can see what kind of authentication device it used. You can see when it was produced, the chain of ownership. And what we're building in the future is chain of custody and provenance, a whole bunch of other things. As of right now, you can see things like, for example, is this bottle, at the winery or, at the winery or at a bonded warehouse? You can see, is it kept with a trusted custodian? And then the cool thing that you can do is you can open that bottle. Am I still with you?
Yeah, with me 100%. And that was going to be my next question about how you track the consumption data with the NFT. So what actually happens when a user clicks open bottle, like in the dVIN interface?
So we've created kind of a cool thing where, because we wanted to be able to track consumption, and also because that data is really valuable. So if you want to open a bottle, let's say that bottle is in your account or in your wallet, we've kind of created a very easy to use Web 2 interface, but it has a very solid Web 3 backbone to it. So, if you sign in with your phone number, you never even know that you have a wallet or that you're using Web 3. But if you sign in with your MetaMask wallet, you have a very kind of Web 3 self-custodial experience. So your digital cork NFT, if it's in your wallet, when you open the physical bottle, you can actually also pull the digital cork. And pulling the digital cork, it's very simple. You just press a button, and if you're using your MetaMask wallet, you need to sign a message because you're actually destroying an asset. Because what happens when you open that bottle, there's an interesting transaction. So the digital cork, or the digital product passport, that NFT that is the digital twin for the bottle, that's burned, that's destroyed. And then a new token is created for you that's called a tasting token. And the tasting token comes with status and rewards from the winemaker. It's kind of like an exchange, right? The winemaker is giving you status and rewards in exchange for you telling the winemaker, I've opened this bottle. Right now, it's voluntary and incentivized. Over time, there will be technology that's built to make sure that that's done automatically. But we're incentivizing it right now because the data is super valuable. The winemaker now gets to know where their bottles are in the world, when they're being opened, where they're being opened, who's opening them. And we built another kind of cool function on it because wine is intrinsically social, right? I mean, I'm a professional, so I'm allowed to drink a bottle of wine by myself. But most people really should be sharing wine with their friends and family, right? So what we built was a way that when you open a bottle, you get a tasting token that comes with that rewards and status. But you can also mint tasting tokens for other people that you're sharing the wine with. So on a regular 750 milliliter bottle of wine, a regular size bottle of wine, you can share it with up to 12 other people. So those people will get tasting tokens as well. And it's kind of a cool thing, right? It gives you a nice record of the great wines that you've opened, the wines that you tasted, and who you've tasted them with. So that's kind of fun. But the rewards and the status are where it's really cool. So we really modeled it after airline miles, right? And it's actually really similar. So when you open a bottle and you get a tasting token, if you collect enough tasting tokens, that could give you, say, Grand Cru status with the winery. So now when you go to the winery, maybe you get a free experience to do a barrel tasting, or maybe you get invited to a winemaker dinner when the winemaker comes to your town, or maybe you get invited to a harvest experience. The other thing you could get is access to wines that you wouldn't normally be able to buy. As I was talking about earlier, these investment grade wines are highly allocated. They only make 10,000 bottles maybe, and there's 1 million people that want to buy them. Well, if you can prove that you're a good customer and that you're a good consumer of the winery by saying, hey, I've got 30 tasting tokens, I've developed status with you, then the winery now has an incentive to put you on the list, to give you access to wines that other people wouldn't have access to. So that's the engine that we've built that provides that data to winemakers and helps to kind of manage the digital corks out there in the world. Does that make sense?
It 100% makes sense. And I love that system that you guys have built. The only question I have around that is, do the users that you're sharing the corks with have to also have like a MetaMask wallet, or could they also like use Wallet Connect and you could share the tasting tokens just with a phone number?
You could do it with a phone number. So we like I said, we've developed the overlap between wine lovers and Web3 natives is bigger than we thought it was. but it's not huge, right? I mean, when you think about the people that like to drink expensive wine in your life, not all of them are going to be, big crypto degens. So what we built was a really simple system. And with like 2 clicks, you put in your phone number, email address, and you can claim a tasting token it's really 2 clicks in about 5 seconds. And most people that have tasting tokens, they don't even know that they're NFTs, right? And once we launch VIN, which we're launching on September 21st at Breakpoint, when you claim a tasting token or when you open a bottle, you're actually going to get crypto. You're going to get VIN coin. And a lot of the people that are going to get VIN coin, they won't even know that they have a cryptocurrency. They'll just know that they've got these great loyalty points that they can use to buy more wine or pay for a wine tasting or maybe even, trade in for points with Four Seasons.
It's such an incredible model you guys are building. I'm really excited to just dive in myself. I'll need to get some more fine wine just to scan in here. I'm debating going to the store later today just to fill up my cellar. So if you want to get in the I think we told you, we're running a points program right now with for people to be able to tokenize wines from home, get points in order to get an airdrop of Incoin. And I just posted a QR code in the chat or as a reply to this space, where if you scan that, you can get on the platform, you get 2,500 points right off the bat from scanning that token, and you'll kind of get to see how everything works. I cannot wait to get in there and claim those myself, and thank you for doing that. Anyone that doesn't see that, that's at the top of the space in the pinned tweets. And to learn more about the challenge that dVIN has going on, you can go back in the pinned tweets. They're the second and third pinned tweet there if you'd like to learn more. And I'd also just like to mention we do end these with a Q&A. If you do have any questions, you can reply to the first pinned tweet, and we'll make sure and work those into our panel. There was something on your website that I'd never really heard about, and I'm a little curious to just have you explain it, David, and kind of its significance and how dVIN's involved with it. I'm referring to the Bhutan inaugural harvest, and I might have completely butchered that, but if you could explain what that is and how dVIN's been involved, that'd be great.
Sure. So, I've been in the wine industry for a while, and I've done a lot of different things. One of the projects that I worked on many, many years ago was I was brought in as a subject matter expert for a television series and a series of documentaries on wine and winemakers and cool wine projects. And through that, I met one of the most interesting people I've ever met in the world, who is the co-owner or the co-founder of the Bhutan Wine Company. And the story goes like this. It's actually pretty simple. He was running a marathon. He was running, I think, 7 marathons in 7 countries or 7 continents, something like that. And one of the marathons was in Bhutan. And this guy happens to be a candidate to be a master of wine. There's only 280 masters of wine in the world. It just means that you know a lot about wine. And while he was running his marathon, he saw that the terroir or the conditions, the growing conditions in Bhutan, which is a little country nestled between China and India and Nepal, right? Like it's a mountain country. And I'll tell you more about that in a second. Anyways, he was running, he saw that. He was like, I bet they make great wine here. And he asked around, and they had never made wine in Bhutan. So he went home, he wrote up basically a business plan and a business case for why he thought that Bhutan would make great wine. He sent it in to somebody that he knew and didn't hear anything back. And the next year he went to go run the marathon again, and he got picked up by one of the government ministers who took him for an audience with the king and the queen. And the king and the queen of Bhutan ended up being great wine lovers. And they said, we want to start a wine business here in Bhutan, but you have to work with us. So long story short, that was 8 years ago. And they planted the first vines in Bhutan. I was there last year. I'm on the board of the company, just because I've known him for a long time. And I was there last year to kind of check out the grapes. And we did kind of an interesting project where, we have, because we've been running dVIN since 2021, we have this kind of sandbox environment that has a bunch of really great, I would say, wine nerds from all over the world that we've been they've been our sandbox users. And so we offered them to go on this trip to Bhutan for the inaugural harvest. And they just finished. They just got back. So for most of August, I don't know, we sent a bunch of people to Bhutan to help with the harvest, learn about Bhutan, make the very first few barrels of wine in Bhutan. It was really a fantastic, wonderful experience. My co-founder went this year. I went last year, and I'm going to go again in October for a big festival. But it's I got to tell you, it's one of the most beautiful places in the world. And interestingly, there hasn't been a country that basically planted a first vineyard since New Zealand in 1850, I think. So it's the first new vineyard in a country in 150 or 180 years. So it's pretty, I don't know, it's pretty monumental. It's pretty remarkable. And the terroir is amazing. Everyone's very excited about the wine.
Have you tasted one of the bottles yet?
No, so it hasn't been bottled yet. It was the very first, so they just finished harvesting. They're fermenting it now. It'll probably go in barrel sometime in November, December, and then it'll go in bottle in about a year. So the very first bottles you'll be able to taste in about a year. But I did taste some of the grapes last year. We did like a little, you can cheat a little bit and you kind of make a little bit of wine in a test tube. And we did that last year. And I got to tell you, the quality of the grapes is just phenomenal. Bhutan is really interesting in a couple of different ways. One way is that it's the only country in the world that has a gross happiness index instead of a gross domestic product. They really do kind of measure the country on how happy people are. It's also it is the only country in the world that is carbon negative, which means that it makes more renewable energy than it uses in energy. And it sends most of that energy to India and other surrounding countries. And the third kind of interesting piece of it is that one of the big ways that Bhutan makes all that energy is they've got a giant hydroelectric dam. And that hydroelectric dam since 2017 has been hooked up to a fairly decent sized Bitcoin farm. And the kingdom of Bhutan, the government of Bhutan has been mining Bitcoin since 2017, using all renewable energy. So that's just a fun fact.
That's incredible. And I'm really not familiar with Bhutan personally, and I love all the background I can get on it. So thank you. And my last question about that, was this a benefit of being a community member, or was this for the dVIN team, like the people that got to go?
It was completely for the community. So, like I said, when we launched the project back in 2021, we knew that we wanted to build some things, and we wanted a group of users. And that group of users started with kind of 50 of our friends and family. Over time, it's grown to about 1,200. Well, it was about 1,200 users in August of this year. It was private. We only let people in that we knew. So in order to get into dVIN, you had to know someone, and we actually did it with tasting tokens. So we had this kind of informal rule where in order to get into the club, somebody that was already a member had to pour you a glass of wine. So we thought that was a really fun way to grow our little community. We've said, I think August 1st, we opened it up to the public. So now anybody can come in. You can become a member, or you can become a user. You can use the platform. You can tokenize wines from your home cellar. You can do. There's a lot of fun things you can do on the platform. We have lots of events. We're going to have a bunch of events in Singapore, and then we've got a little tokenized membership piece of it as well. But that's really limited to just the first couple thousand people.
Okay, this is all fascinating stuff. If I could jump in again here, guys. Again, this is Bob Murphy, the economist. Can you speak a little bit about just what the existence of the tokenization element you think is either has done or is doing to just the wine market in general? So just to give you an idea of what I mean, because we're doing this with life insurance, and so I was saying that imagine if there was a world where there wasn't a secondary market for automobiles, where you bought a new car from the manufacturer and then you just ran it into the ground and you could, maybe sell it for scrap, but you weren't allowed legally to sell your car to somebody else. That would presumably lower car prices, whereas if you can resell it down the road, that raises, what you're willing to pay up front for it and so forth, and certainly affects the market. So anyway, can you just speak in terms of big picture, just the existence now, what you guys are doing? What do you think that does to, the price of a given bottle of wine and, compared to the alternate universe where tokenization never happened?
Sure. Well, so one of the things that I say all the time is tokenization. The way that you can explain tokenization of wine is it turns wine from being a possession into an asset. And when you think about it, what that means is right now, if I'm holding a bottle of wine, that's my bottle. And if I hand it to you and you're holding that bottle, that's now your bottle, right? Because it's a possession. But if you put that wine on chain and you tokenize it, then now there's a registry where you know who owns that bottle. And if you know who owns that bottle, now it becomes an asset, because there's a lot of things that you can do with it once it's an asset. One of the big things, and this is just a huge problem that no one has been able to solve for a really long time, but you can't insure your wine collection. If you have, let's say you've got a $500,000 wine cellar at home or $1 million wine cellar, and lots of people do, there is no insurance policy you can get for that. And the reason is because how do they know that you own it, right? You can't insure something that you can't prove that you own. But once it's tokenized, now you can insure it. You can also borrow against it. You can leverage it. Now, that's kind of interesting for the secondary market. If you want to trade, or if you want to, let's say you want to be an investor in wine, or you want to trade wine, that's kind of interesting that you can leverage it. It also provides kind of more interesting, price transparency. Right now, if you wanted to look up, price history, that would be really difficult. But if it's on chain, now you can know what any given bottle is trading for at any given time. So that's pretty valuable. But when you think about the leverage aspect, what's really interesting about that is on the winemaker side. So I was mentioning earlier Barolo, which is a little place in Piemonte in Italy. That's where kind of most of the investment grade wines from Italy are. There's a rule in Barolo by the local regulatory agency that says that when you make wine in Barolo, it has to stay in barrel for 4 years and then in bottle for 4 years before you can sell it. Which means that every winemaker in Barolo has 8 years worth of wine in inventory. But because they're not allowed to sell it, it's a liability, not an asset, right? They've got to pay to hold on to it, but they can't sell it. Well, once it's tokenized, you can do all kinds of stuff with that, right? Now you can, for example, you can borrow against it for operating expenses, or you can sell futures, or you can hedge, it becomes an asset that you can work with it for your business. And that just creates a whole world of possibilities for the wine industry. Whether you're a winemaker and now you have more financial tools at your disposal, or you're a wine investor and now you can invest in wine in the same way that you would invest in other things, with, like I said, with leverage or insurance, but more importantly with price transparency, price history, or even if you're just like a regular consumer, knowing that the bottle that you have is authentic and came directly from the winemaker, and then being able to establish a connection with that winemaker through tokenization. We think that it unlocks really all of those possibilities. Tokenizing wine unlocks all of those possibilities.
Yeah, that's great. I was gonna ask as a follow-up about, like futures contracts and stuff like that, just giving the winemakers more
Sure.
feedback in terms of planning, like you say, with the consumption stuff too, where if people they need to know the typical life cycle of a given bottle, or the brand and so forth, and that would just give them so much more feedback to be able to make these decisions that are like 20, 30-year horizons.
Yeah. I mean, imagine having a business where you don't have any idea who your customer is. You don't know their demographics. You don't know when they're going to consume your product. Is it next year? Is it 10 years from now? You don't have any idea. You don't know, you don't even know where they're consuming it. So you don't know where to send the replacement product. You just don't know anything. And so you're flying blind. And that's why those businesses really haven't gotten significantly. The wine industry, while it's pretty big, it's not very profitable. And it's not very profitable because they really just don't have the tools to make the businesses more efficient and more profitable. And we think that tokenization is going to provide just really like a boundless tools to winemakers or the whole industry to be able to really modernize the industry, make it more profitable, make everybody happier and make better business.
Yeah, because it is. I'm just sitting here brainstorming, because there's long-lived asset like housing or something, or a skyscraper is a very long-term thing, but it provides a flow of services all along the way, and even jewelry and things like that. Yeah, it's kind of an inflation hedge if you get your wife a gold necklace, but she can wear it out in the media. It's not purely an investment. Whereas with the wine, yeah, like you're saying, it's besides the prestige of having it at your house for people to look at. It's it doesn't really do what its job is until you drink it, and then boom, it's done. So
right. But again, one of the things that we're really working on. So this is just a funny thing, but one of the first people that came to us, and we're boring. I'm into supply chain efficiency. So I always tell people this is the most boring project in blockchain, because we're working with data and supply chains, and I'm trying to give business intelligence to winemakers. It's not a very sexy project, but we did get kind of a fun call last year. So Rolls-Royce has a tent at the F1 next year, and in Dubai. And what they wanted to do was say, okay, can you help us identify people that like to drink the most expensive wines in the world? And can we identify those people by, they have those tokens, and then we give them free access to our tent at the F1 in Dubai. And I was like, yeah, that's cool. I get that. So for them, it makes perfect sense, right? They're looking for people that like to drink very, very expensive wines. And so they're now saying, okay, we can give all of those people really cool benefits, because otherwise, how would you know? You wouldn't know. It's really hard to identify people that like wine. It's very hard to acquire new customers.
What you guys do from a community standpoint is so impressive, David. Just the two things that you've highlighted in terms of the Bhutan trip and then the Rolls-Royce event, those are two incredible community perks. I'm just curious if you could highlight some additional benefits of Club dVIN membership, and just potential additional benefits of tasting tokens or the other NFTs on the platform. Yeah.
Sure. So look, tasting tokens and digital corks, they almost always come with various different rewards from the winemakers themselves. So anytime you buy a wine that's been tokenized on dVIN, whether it's, we do have a way for members to be able to buy on our platform, but over the course of the next few months, you'll see a bunch of platforms popping up. We're doing a really cool partnership with a negociant in Bordeaux, who's going to put $1 million worth of wine on a new platform. Actually, I'm not going to announce the name yet, but it's really fun, where you can only buy that wine with Vincoin, right? So we're doing some fun stuff there. But basically, any wine that's purchased that has a digital cork on it will come with some sort of rewards and status with the winemaker, right? So those rewards could be anything from, a tasting at the winery to a winemaker dinner to a special harvest experience. Sometimes it's discounts on buying more wine, but basically every bottle and every tasting token will come with those rewards, because it's really a way not only for us to grow our community, but for each individual winemaker to grow their community, right? Like they want to build relationships with their best consumers. So it really creates that one-on-one relationship with the winemaker, so the winemaker can provide rewards to their best customers. So that's kind of what happens on an individual bottle level. Our members do get some pretty special perks. They get obviously first access to all of the products and all of the new features that we put out there. One of them that we just launched is called Wine Guy, which is a very cool little AI engine where we have access to really a lot of great data and information on wine. So we were able to, over the course of the last 8 months, we've built out a specialized large language model with proprietary wine information and wine data. And what Wine Guy does, it's just a new feature that we just launched to members in the last couple of days. But what that does is it'll analyze all of the wine that you've tasted and all of the wine in your cellar. And you can ask it anything from, food pairing suggestions to tasting notes to what wine should I buy? I was just in Sicily on vacation, and I was testing out the platform, and it was telling me which Sicilian wine I should get at which restaurant and what dish I should order with it. Really pretty interesting and pretty detailed. Kind of loved it. So that's one of the things. But then there's also just these amazing once in a lifetime experiences. So the Bhutan thing was pretty special. I think our members were the first people from outside of Bhutan to ever see these vineyards. And the vineyards are in the most spectacular places in the world. I mean, we'll put some photos up, but really pretty amazing. We have lots of other events. Last year we did an event at Hospice de Beaune, which is a very exclusive event in Burgundy every year. We all the time have these great kind of cool events with winemakers. One of our partners is Tony Parker, the basketball player. He's got a little winery in Avignon. He's been a partner for a long time. We're doing a members only event at his house in Texas to pick up the pickup party. We do a lot of that kind of stuff, and it's just because myself and the other co-founders, we've been in the industry for a long time. We kind of know everybody, so it gives us, we just get access to kind of some of the most fun and interesting and exclusive events and experiences and wine in the world. We do wine drops on the platform where you're buying wine that you just wouldn't be able to buy out in the real world. And you're getting it cheaper than that. Even if you could, you wouldn't be able to buy it at those prices. So those are the kinds of things that we do for members, but it's really, that part's really for wine nerds.
You guys have an impressive list of partnerships on your platform, and I'm a huge NBA fan, so I love the collaboration with Tony Parker, and just what you guys have been able to do on the community side is so incredible, and just working with different winemakers themselves to offer perks for each individual bottle is beyond impressive. So just so you said your background was really more in tech, but you've always been in wine. So how did you really get in, or how did you see tokenization being the solution for wine? And do you see tokenization being a solution for other asset classes beyond wine?
So absolutely. I'll start with the first part of that, which is, so I started in wine on the production side, right? I sold my company. I went to Argentina. We bought raw land, and I learned the wine business literally we bought a virgin piece of land. So started with zero and learned from zero. And I was very fortunate to have learned from some of the smartest and most generous wine professionals in the world. And that really helped me to learn a lot about the industry, to learn a lot about winemaking. And when I was a few years later, about 8 years later, maybe 15 years ago, I went to Hong Kong to build out our Asian business. And I just wanted to spend a couple of years there. There were some really interesting things that were happening. And what I realized is that the more I looked into the distribution side of the business and the sales side of the business, as soon as we had wine to sell, I kind of had to start learning about that. And what I learned was that there was just no information. I came from tech. So I wanted to make data-driven decisions, but there was no data to make those decisions. So, one of the big problems that I learned about while I was in Asia was, nobody knew where their wines were being sold or how much they were being sold for. So China at the time was a huge wine market, but it was a black hole. Nobody had any information. So I thought that a fun solution would be to build an iPad wine list. So I started a little company. I built a fairly simple app for the iPad, and we gave it away for free to restaurants in Asia. With the caveat was that they had to use our platform. So they got this cool wine list that had lots of information, that was multilingual. It was really cool, easy for them to update pricing, easy for them to, update their inventory. But what we got was data. So we knew where every wine was being sold and for how much it was being sold for. And that data proved incredibly valuable as we kind of put our business together and started selling wine. We could know, hey, our wine is selling really well in this particular area, or even at this particular restaurant. And so I started thinking about data, way back then, 15 years ago in Hong Kong, and started looking for solutions. How can we get more and more data to make better decisions? And what I learned was that it was too hard. You couldn't really get the data because the industry was so atomized, we didn't use this word back then, but was so decentralized. There was no one player where you could just plug a bunch of tech in and out would pop data. That didn't work. That works in nearly every other industry, but in the wine industry, because there are so many little players, there was just nowhere to get data. And so when the blockchain came around, or when I started learning about the blockchain, which was many years later, what I saw was a way that you could take, or was a way that you could use, you could take an atomized industry and apply a decentralized technology to it, where all of a sudden now, instead of trying to shoehorn some sort of centralized solution into a decentralized industry, you could create a decentralized solution and still get the data. And that's what the light bulb went off for me when I saw that. And that's why I got excited about it.
Incredible. And so with that, are there other industries that you're excited about tokenization's potential impact?
I mean, look, I'll tell you, people, I just think this is funny, but people all the time tell me, how are you going to get like wine people or winemakers on Web3? Like, how are you going to get people to do Web3 stuff? How are you going to get them to like get a wallet and like figure out like the blockchain? And my story for a long time was, well, we're gonna make it really transparent, and we're gonna make the blockchain part invisible and do it Web2. But there was a story that came out a little while ago that, and I don't know if you've seen this, but the DMV in California is going to tokenize every car in California. So by 2028, I think, by 2028, every car that's registered in the state of California will be tokenized. So, you're the little old lady in Pasadena with her, 2003 Pontiac, that will be tokenized. Because tokenization is going to help the DMV, it's going to streamline so much of what the DMV does with automobiles. And when I heard that, I was like, man, if you can tokenize every car, 41 million cars in the state of California, like, just think of what you could do. Another one of my favorite stories, and I this is more backward looking than forward looking, but in 2017, one of the models that we used, and we actually hired a couple of the people that worked on this platform, but in 2017, De Beers, the diamond company, was having a lot of problems with blood diamonds. So meaning that people would mine diamonds in areas where they they use slave labor, and so they could really undercut the prices of De Beers. And so De Beers was like, well, how do we solve this? And what they decided to do was basically put diamonds on the blockchain. They started their own private blockchain called Tracer. And starting in 2017, every diamond that was mined anywhere in the world legitimately is put on the blockchain. And they're able to do it because every diamond has a unique signature under UV light. So it's really easy to identify a diamond. You don't have to like put a serial number on it or tag it somehow. It just automatically, it's very easy to identify a diamond. But as soon as they did it, and then they kind of created a little chain of custody. So, from the mine all the way to the retailer, you can identify diamonds. And what it did is it really did solve that problem of blood diamonds. There really isn't a blood diamond problem anymore because no legitimate retailer will sell a diamond that isn't on the Tracer blockchain, that can't be traced all the way back to the mine, to a legitimate mine. So like it solved that problem. But what the other problem that it solved that they didn't even consider was diamond theft. Because apparently, and I didn't know this, but apparently lots of sort of criminals use diamonds as a way to move money around the world. So they'll steal, large amounts of diamonds in order to use them they'll steal them from the mines, right? In order to use them to move money around the world. Well, they can't do that anymore. Because now if you try to sell a stolen diamond, someone can look it up and they'll be like, no, you don't own this diamond. You can't sell it. Because there's a registry. There's a blockchain that says who owns every diamond that was legitimately mined after 2017 in the world. So they've not only they've not only eliminated the blood diamond problem, but they've eliminated a huge security problem in a huge industry. And they didn't even know that they were solving that problem when they put when they put diamonds on the blockchain. So I look at it and I see just unlimited opportunities to tokenize. I think there's kind of an unlimited, untapped market for tokenizing real world assets.
That's incredible, and I love the example you gave with diamonds. And with that, David, we're up on time. I've had such an incredible time learning more about dVIN and the tokenization of fine wine. Before we wrap things up here, is there anything you'd like to leave the listeners with, or anything that the users can do to stay in contact with the developments going on at dVIN?
Sure. So look, I think the most important thing, if you take a minute, scan that QR code that's in the comments and join you, that'll get you on the platform. And it'll give you the ability to join what we call the seller challenge, which is actually really simple. You can tokenize 4 bottles of wine from home. You share those 4 bottles with 4 different friends, and you get 40,000 points. We call it the 4x4 by 40,000 plan. It's really simple. You can do it in a weekend, and that'll get you points. It'll get you a nice airdrop of Vincoin. And with that airdrop, you can come back and, buy more wine or pay for a winemaker dinner or do some cool experience. It's a way for you to if you, I think it's kind of 2 cool things. One is if you love wine, but you're not so sure about blockchain, this is a really easy and cool way for you to learn about tokenization and blockchain and even crypto by drinking wine and sharing it with friends. But if you're a degen and you really know crypto, this is a really cool way for you to invite the crypto skeptics in your life into Web3 with a glass of wine, right? I'm going to pour you a glass of wine. That's going to get you a little bit of Vincoin, and you can see how Web3 and blockchain can really provide value in the world. And so that's what we really love about it.
And I love that too, David. I can't wait to scan the QR code myself and get myself set up and take part in the challenge and get my friends involved. So thank you so much for sharing with us today. It's been a pleasure having you on. And for all of the listeners, this has been Infineo's bi-weekly RWA tokenization space. We host these every other Tuesday at 12 p.m. Eastern. And we'd love to have you on the next one. If you're interested in staying in contact with Infineo, I highly suggest subscribing to our newsletter. You can do that at infineo.ai/#newsletter. Again, that's infineo.ai/#newsletter. Thank you all for listening. And hope everyone has a great rest of your day.
Thanks, guys.